Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking some of your time and listening to my Faith Forum. I have pages 63 through 68. This is where Shane Hipps talks about the first electronic medium and how it impacted the world. He links the spread of postmodernism to the invention of the telegraph. Hipps shares two examples, and they both have to do with mirrors. Whether it's a room of mirrors or a hall of mirrors, it's disorienting. There's so many mirrors everywhere. There's so much information and so much going on, but there's no context, and you don't know where you are. It's confusing. It's disorienting. And he suggests that the vast amount of electronic mediums that we have are like these mirrors. We must break many of them so then we can see one clearly. This will help us to think through our electronic mediums. So in my section of the book, he breaks down all the other mirrors and focuses in on the telegraph. On page 63, he tells us that the telegraph was invented by Samuel Morse. The world could now send messages moving at the speed of light across the world instantly. But there was no cultural context. There was no historical context. There was just so much more information. With so many messages that were out of context, random messages of world events and things going on and drama or whatnot began to cause people to develop a nihilistic worldview. With so much disaster that doesn't make any sense, it's a lot easier to believe that truth is relative and reject a belief in God and to reject the belief in absolute truth. We're so disoriented with the amount of information, which makes us have a lack of clarity in order to think how we should be able to think. Hipps defends his theory in page 67. He writes, "Prior to the telegraph, information tended to be local, rooted in a context and wrapped in history to provide meaning and coherence. Even encyclopedias that provided global information were laden with context and history. With the telegraph, information was instantly rent from its local and historical setting. It was presented as a mosaic of unrelated data points with no apparent connection, causes, or meaning. Prior to the telegraph, information was gathered for the purpose of deepening our understanding and wisdom. But with the telegraph, information became a commodity in itself, something that could be bought or sold. Its price was determined by how fast and how far it traveled." Hipps is telling us that with all the mirrors of information, we can't see clearly, we can't form good opinions about truth because there's so much going on. And he says that the telegraph contributed to that way of thinking that's so confusing that we just give up and decide to reject absolute truth. It's much easier to believe that truth is relative, that there's no actual solid foundation of truth. Our world is so random and full of content, but there's no context. So what do we do from here? We must have a firm foundation to identify what is true. That's why Paul in Ephesians 4 wants us to listen to Christ so that we will not be like little children, tossed by the waves and blown around by every wind of teaching, by human cunning with cleverness in the techniques of deceit. But speaking the truth in love, let us grow in every way into him who is the head, Christ." And that's verse 14 and 15. In such a confusing world, it's easy to give up and embrace postmodernism. But if we're going to become wise, and if we're going to make any progress, we must accept that there is an absolute truth. So my questions for you are, recently, in what ways have you seen media contribute to postmodernism? Second, how has electronic media affected your perception of truth? And third, what are some ways you can guard yourself against a nihilistic worldview in our world of media?